Hi, everyone. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your Sun and Rising sign horoscopes for the month of August 2019. This is the Sun and Rising sign horoscope for Libras. All right, so the month gets started after a big new moon on July 31st, and I'm mentioning it because it really tones the entire month of August. So we'll take a look at that first. It lands for you as a Libra. It lands in your 11th house. And it's happening in a square to the planet Uranus in the 8th house. Venus is also moving into a square with Uranus from the 11th to the 8th house. Now, overall, with an emphasis on the 11th house, the place of friends, colleagues, benefactors, allies, groups that you belong to that mean a lot to you in one way or another, whether it's professional groups, social circles, religious groups, very emphasized this month with a new moon in that house. Oftentimes what you're seeing is some kind of new development that's transpiring in that place, a theme of growth and development among friends or among colleagues. Oftentimes you'll meet new people who become very beneficial or helpful to you in one way or another during this time, or you'll enter into a new group or scene that's, advantageous in one way or another. Now, the fact that Venus is making a square to Uranus at this time is also really interesting because Uranus in the 8th house is, that can be a really heavy planet in a difficult house, a house that has a lot to do with karmic penalties and karmic bills that kind of are due, as well as topics like other people's money or gain that comes from other people, or other people's losses, even like inheritance, money that comes through death, etc. So it's interesting because the signature of the square to Uranus could mean that some kind of unexpected misfortune or difficulty leads you to gain some kind of new ally or friend or promotion, or in other words, that something helpful could come into your life, though it comes kind of at the same time that there's some kind of disruption or shocking sudden development. Not to freak you out, but you would notice this the first couple of days of the month probably. Now, this could also have something to do with sudden dramatic changes in relationships, friendships, groups, or social circles, because Venus's square to Uranus can disturb relationships. The theme of the need for greater independence or freedom can also be really pronounced right now. And you want to be careful of, basically anything that's too provocative or that could get you into trouble. This is a little bit of a rebellious new moon cycle, and a rebellious Venus-Uranus dynamic can spell trouble for relationships. Leo energy generally is about knowing how to be liked by others, whereas the square to Uranus is not really caring what other people think. So some balance of those two extremes of caring too much or too little about what other people think is probably important. The other thing you want to be careful of is kind of like opportunism, people using you or being used. Also be careful of like this, just kind of like the desire to make some kind of big aesthetic change. And it's not really, Venus square Uranus is not the time to get a facelift or a tattoo, basically. So, I mean, generally speaking, it can turn out a little wonky. So, that starts the month. Now, on the 6th to the 8th, you're going to see the Sun and Venus in Leo going through trines to Jupiter in your 3rd house, which is pretty beneficial in terms of, the third Jupiter, by the way, is turning direct. I should mention that first on August 11th. So there's a kind of a turn of momentum for Jupiter. Things are going to start getting better after a period where, for a little while now, Jupiter's been retrograde. There's been maybe a feeling of the wind that's kind of, you get a big surge of wind at your back, and then all of a sudden it gets so wild it starts turning you in a direction you can't control it, or sometimes the wind just dies down and stops. This kind of like Jupiter retrograde in a fire sign. Jupiter turning direct is like slowly starting to regain some kind of momentum. You could think about it that way. And here you're seeing it in connection to friends, groups, colleagues, allies. And Venus and the Sun connecting with Jupiter during this time should just give you some kind of positive forward momentum and just generally positive social connections at this time that may be really beneficial. Could have something to do with siblings with Jupiter in the third house, but usually the third house, Jupiter is pertaining to the immediate environment. That means the kind of the flow of things that happen every day that tend to be, like the rhythm of your everyday life. And something beneficial kind of coming in and maybe helping you start to return to normalcy after a period of maybe some setbacks or delays, or, kind of having to slog through something, or even having your sense of faith or trust broken down a little bit, questioning something, the faith, the sense of confidence, forward momentum starting to return. And you'll probably notice it in your immediate environment, just like the wind is coming back again. It's like, oh, okay, good. We're going in the right direction again. So that's something to think about around the 6th to the 8th. Now, when you go from the 11th all the way up to the 15th, Venus is getting into a cazimi relationship with the Sun. That means Venus is conjoining the Sun at the same degree, going into what we call the heart of the Sun, becomes very empowered. This is your ruling planet. It's a great moment of personal empowerment for you when Venus is at the heart of the Sun. And in a house that has a lot to do, again, with allies and benefactors, or groups of people that you have a lot in common with, either ideologically or spiritually, or somehow professionally. So I like this moment as an empowered moment where you might be noticed by others, or you might pick up some support from other people, or even just enjoying your social life, or even just positive romantic connections that could crop up during this time. This is a better month than last month, in my opinion. Those eclipses were pretty gnarly. So I'm hoping that you enjoy these transits a little bit more. When we go to the 15th, we're looking at a full moon that's landing in Aquarius, which is your 5th house. And that's a house that where you're starting to look at things like joy, pleasure, recreation, personal time, creativity. And there's some tension between that full moon and the 11th house stellium. Sometimes that means that who you are trying to be as a creative individual is somehow at odds with, or a little estranged from, or even alienated from a larger group of people. So this is maybe some tension between being yourself, following what makes you feel good, so to speak, and then on the other hand, you're looking at how to be liked, and how to, kind of like if you're at a dinner. If you're at a dinner party with lots of people that are important in your whatever your professional industry is, you're going to be very Leo in the 11th about it. You may or may not let it out that you have like a secret interest in some random field of outsider art or something like that, right? It's not like the first thing that you're going to talk about, because people will be like, okay, he's weird or whatever. But you may feel like you can't help yourself, like you have to show some side of you that's different, that may not fit in as much, and maybe you don't care. So again, that feeling of like a little bit of healthy rebelliousness that's in the air around this time. You're going to see Mercury squaring Uranus at the same time, right around that same time. So, how much do we care about what other people think? It's a time of being innovative and being different, and also maybe being able to sell being different, maybe being able to pitch it and find that others like it. So originality as well might be more appealing and less difficult to communicate with others. All right, so that's all the way up to about the full moon. Then what happens at the end of the month is everything just starts going right into Virgo. Mars goes into Virgo. Then you've got Venus going into Virgo, then the Sun into Virgo, then, Venus conjoins Mars in Virgo. Then on the 29th, Mercury goes into Virgo. On the 30th, there's a new moon in Virgo. Where is that? That's your 12th house. So, your 12th house really highlighted from the 18th through the end of the month. Now, what does that mean? Okay, well, not fun stuff to talk about, but the 12th house is a house that was related to self-undoing. It's related to things that come in and sort of take away your sanity or your groove, whether it's your physical energy or your health. Sometimes you pick up a cold. Sometimes it's your sanity. Something's just driving you nuts and you can't get into a zone with your life because something keeps coming in and sort of, taking away your attention. Anxiety, depression, sickness, as well as just dealing with like gossip at work or people who are trying to like, be a pain in your butt. All 12th house stuff. So this 12th house emphasis can also be self-destructive, being self-critical, being self-destructive, taking yourself away from yourself, taking yourself out of your own center. You got to be careful of all of that stuff. It's more dramatic towards the end of the month. Now, healing can come out of this. Evaluating, taking stock, accounting, sort of researching and taking account for your own stuff like that might be pronounced with all of the Virgo energy in the 12th house as well. That would be probably the light side of it. What you want to be careful of is, being hypercritical of yourself or somewhat, if you get really repressed within yourself, if you're bottled up too tight, the tendency is to blow up really, in a crazy way. So you also want to be careful of that because a lot of planets in Virgo sometimes spell this kind of, in sort of archetypal psychology, we talk about it as a sort of the virgin whore dichotomy. Like you're either pure saintly or you're just like you're just a total worldly, slutty person. It's like these extremes, and we like, so none of us are either of those things most of the time, right? Like sometimes we go to extremes, but like for the most part, like none of us are huge sinners or huge saints. But we can feel as though we are, and Virgo tends to bring up that dichotomy really powerfully. What to speak of the fact that at that time, look at the big opposition is to Neptune in the 6th house. Questions about boundaries, questions about health, questions about immunity, questions about what we let in our boundaries and how things affect us, taking inventory, taking stock, but also remembering that the more critical we are of others, the more that we leave ourselves vulnerable to having to be perfect, and when there's a pressure to be perfect, things start falling apart. So be careful of that towards the end of the month. That's what I've got for you this month, Libra. I hope that this was interesting for you. Tell me how things go. Tell me your story, and we'll get back together for horoscope in September. Okay, take care. Bye.